It's now 8:30 and we're going to begin the meeting. Dan, would you like
want
to
this
lead
chair?
us?
That's my chair,
Yeah, this is your chair.
So that, I'm sorry.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That looks like a high chair.
That is true.
Check your little initials on the back.
Are you gonna say that your purse doesn't
Initials
match?
on the back. You got that, Jerry?
Initials? It
This
says,
is yours. That's mine.
you
Okay.
don't want like.
You guys are
You wanna
pretty
borrow
close
my
to the
chair?
same height anyway, so it really doesn't matter.
Wait, camera, Jerry.
I'm just lucky to be here.
We're lucky to have you.
Oh, thank you.
Do we have any
Strange
public
morning.
comment? None? Right. And so moving on to the consent agenda, we have the minutes, the May retirement report, the June retirement report, sorry. And we have preliminary monthly financial report, quarterly trustee education and training report. Are there any, is there any discussion or action regarding the consent agenda?
So I actually have a comment on the minutes.
Yes,
Under closed session number 8,
yes.
board direction was really only given regarding the disability application, not regarding the performance evaluation.
Okay, so we will note and make a modification.
Yes.
So should we do a motion to accept with the modification?
Yes.
Would someone like to do the motion?
So moved.
One second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? The motion passes, okay? We're moving on to discussion and possible action regarding investment matters, monthly investment performance report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Trustees, you have the monthly flash report before you from Cowlin. We had a good month in June. You'll recall May was negative. June, we came back and recaptured a lot of that. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, moving on. We are moving on to the Sarah Strategic Plan and Mission Statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Trustees, you have a copy of our existing strategic plan and mission statement. I'll remind you that by our policy review schedule or calendar, we are supposed to review this every year. It comes up before you in the third quarter every year. So I present it here for discussion. I have no recommended changes to either the strategic plan or the mission statement, but I'd be happy to entertain any feedback or questions you may have.
I don't have any questions, but this is the first time I've understood how tall people look at the world.
And imagine being tall and sitting in a chair.
Oh, boy. No wonder you're so high-minded, Richard.
So we don't need a motion.
No, I don't believe so.
So if there's no discussion, discussion regarding board work plan, the 2019 work plan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Trustees, you have the work plan before you, and I'll briefly run through this, point out just a couple of things. Again, as a reminder, the items in red text are new or have changed in some material way from the last time we reviewed this. I did add the plan for the public safety power shutoff, which we will discuss later. It still says in progress because until we have that discussion, I believe this is in progress because there's the opportunity for some changes. On the client feedback monitoring on page 2, I will point out that for the first time in our history, our approval rate is below the 4.75 level, which is our target. We're targeting a 95% approval rating. So we were below that in the quarter on 6 out of 15 responses. When I went through the details of the responses, there was one of the 6 where we were rated very poorly. And the comments related to that were that the individual really thought that they should have more than 60 days to file their retirement application because there were some complexities involved, is what it said. Apparently, they indicated they had reciprocity and other things that makes it complex. Interestingly, the 60 days is a statutory requirement. We have no ability to change that, so we are stuck with that, at least at the moment. So I wanted to just make you aware of that. Communication metrics, we did present those in May for the first time, and now we're bringing them back on the next item for a regular quarterly review. On page 3, I added a new item here, the V3 upgrade for Pension Gold. That's a new item, and I've debated with whether that should be on the board work plan or just on the staff work plan, but I settled that I wanted you to be aware that that is coming for us, that we will be upgrading to a new version of Pension Gold, that there's no cost to us to do that upgrade, other than the staff time that will be involved for that.
Could you give like a brief explanation of what the upgrade will do, or is it just sort of maintenance type?
So it's a newer version of Pension Gold that has some enhancements and improvements. And I know what some of them are, but I don't know what all of the enhancements are in the V3 upgrade. I know that we will be able to get some better reporting. Currently, for some of our communication metrics, we have to do a workaround to get the data to build those. In version 3, we'll be able to get that data much easier. I know we'll also get two-factor authentication for passwords. Right now, it's just a single password that we have. A lot of you, if you have online bank accounts, you're familiar with the two-factor authentication, where you will receive a text message with a code that you have to enter to log in. We'll have that capability in V3. So that's just some of what's in there. I'm sure there's a lot more that I don't know, but that's coming.
Thank you.
The offsite we pushed out, the next strategic planning offsite we pushed out to 2020 instead of having it this year, as we discussed previously. And I also wanted to point out, previously we had talked about conducting a reciprocal salary survey for all of our members that have left and gone elsewhere to another agency and established reciprocity. That was originally scheduled, we were thinking about this time frame, but we've pushed that out because of other priorities that we're focusing on. And then the asset liability study is in process. Callan will be here next month presenting those results. And after that, after we complete the AL study and the asset allocation, we'll move into reviewing investment policy and everything else. That's all I wanted to highlight, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
On the client feedback, am I understanding that only 6 out of 15 that received the feedback request completed the feedback?
That's correct.
Survey?
Yes.
Okay. Is that standard or is that average?
It feels about average.
Okay.
I have to say feel because I don't know, I don't have those numbers in my head, but yeah, it's definitely, I think it's always been less than a majority that we've gotten a response from.
And based on what you made comments about, it sounds like it was skewed by the one person's very low ratings. Is that my understanding?
So there was one of the 6 was very low,
Mm-hmm.
and their feedback was that they needed more time,
Okay.
that we're legally not allowed to give them. All the other 5 were very positive.
Got it.
And that's what we normally see. Normally this is in the 4.8 to 4.9 range out of 5 is what we're seeing.
Very good.
So,
Any other questions, discussion? And moving on to the board work plan accomplishment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The accomplishments are listed there, and I always like to put this before you, just so you can see everything that we've gotten done. And it's a healthy list, and you should all be very proud of everything we've been able to accomplish in the past 3 years, 3.5 years, I guess, at this point. So.
Any questions, discussions on the accomplishments? Congratulations for.
Well, not me, it's
Well,
your accomplishments.
yes.
Just, I mean, I'm sure all of us serve on several boards, and I think these summaries that we have, staff prepares are, I think, the most concise and most clear in terms of tracking different work projects that I've seen.
I agree with that, and I've got a strategic meeting with one board that we're going to adopt this time to program this for any.
Yay,
Yeah.
the James Wilbanks format.
We get a commission for that, or?
We're not going to use happy faces, so it's not a copycat. It's not plagiarism.
Those are for the visual learners.
Yeah, right.
You can use stoplights. I've seen
Those
that.
are kids.
Well, it's really nice to see that, also the work and then actually see the list of the accomplishments makes everybody feel better. We're doing something right.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so would you like to talk about regarding the communications metrics?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Trustees, you have the communication metrics before you, and they look largely similar to what they were last time. We're still, as far as the open rate, we're well above industry average, and have always been above industry average. We're excited by that. The subscribers, the number of subscribers dipped a little bit, and for the life of me, I'm not recalling what happened. It may have, the online newsletter portal that we use has a tool where subscribers can unsubscribe. We automatically subscribe people when they first come into the system, but they can unsubscribe from that. And I think they may have something in there that if we get bounce backs, they delete it. So that may be what's happening there. So we'll have to look into that.
Remind me what the click rate is?
It's the percentage of recipients that click through the newsletter to a story.
So they open it, but
So
they
they-
don't necessarily click.
Right. So you can open the newsletter and read the entire newsletter, but the click rate is someone that actually clicks on one of the links to get further information.
Oh, it's a second click.
Right. Member direct metrics, still moving in the right direction. The blue line there is always going to be low because that's the number of new accounts we're getting every month, but the black and the gray line are moving in the right direction. And the county's 457 plan, bouncing along, nearing 25% of eligible members participating in the county's 457 plan. So we'll hope to see some improvement there over time. But we'll see how that goes.
These graphs are great.
Thank you.
I can't recall in any of the newsletters of cross-promotion. Like, if you did the retirement newsletter saying, hey, go to the 457,
Oh,
sign up for that.
We've absolutely done that a number of times.
Right.
We keep trying to push that. You're not our target demographic there.
Right. I got that.
Is the county expanding any of the matching contributions that they make to?
That's going to be subject to
Has been.
labor negotiations, and I have no information about that.
I've heard a rumor that employees want a salary increase, so.
What is that?
Who knew?
Yeah.
okay, well, and moving on to the dreaded, well, I don't know, dreaded, we're prepared, public safety power shutoff plan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Trustees, you have the information before you that I've outlined our planned response. You know, I think we've got a good plan now for both what we're going to do when it happens to us this summer. And I think that plan will carry us into the longer term. The only question that, and at the very end, I talk about the long-term response. I think there's only two potential long-term responses for us. We either continue with our current plan, or we consider adding a generator to the building. And I'm not going to say anything else. I'll just throw that out. I'm happy to answer any questions or hear your feedback or responses on the plan as it exists and the potential long-term response.
Is there any pressure from our renters
No.
to make one available?
No.
That's a good question.
So I did have a conversation with the
Yeah,
manager,
that's a good question.
and you know, the question was, what are we doing in response to it? And I outlined how, you know, we have telework, and if PSPS happens during the critical time of the month, you know, our plan is to use telework to do the retirement benefit processing, but the building, you know, if we have no power here, we're just not going to operate here. And they said they understood, and that's their plan as well. So they'll just shut down and cease operations there until power is restored. So.
Jerry?
The irony, my home has no PG&E today. They're replacing the pole. So I guess I did not realize when all this started, I thought, you know, a part of it might be a PR move to be sure that PG&E gets as much backing as they feel they need as far as support from the state and the customers and their, pardon me, ability to sock it to all of us who pay these bills. I would like us to think about a generator again, because I was unaware it would be 5 years, could be 5 years, or possibly even longer, that we will be dealing with this. And we're talking about telework, so I have no power at home. Where could I go if the city is down? And I would be absolutely lost without my start of the month appears regularly in my checking account pension, for which I'm most grateful. I believe that a generator is a small price to pay to be able to deliver what we need to for our retirees who may be without power for an extended time.
Yeah.
Along with that, my question would be the telework part of it.
Yeah.
Because if we're out here, we are out
Yeah.
at home, and so how are we going to get telework done?
Richard?
Go ahead, let him.
I can respond to the questions as we go, or wait.
That's
Okay. So the telework plan is multi-stepped. So if there's no power at our facility here, I think the first step is, do individuals have power at home? And can they operate and do their work from home? If yes, then stop there. If no,
I read that,
then the next step is, you know, go to the county administration building.
because they do have a backup generator.
They do have some backup generator capacity now, but they're actively working to increase that capacity. And I've had some initial conversations with the disaster planning staff there that, you know, if we're in this very small window, we're going to need some capability to do some telework. And I believe that's, I don't know that the capability is there today right now, but I think it's coming when they build on their capacity with generator power. So.
Can I follow up on
Yeah, is that all right?
Go ahead, and I'll wait.
Well, I went through the list here and just thinking about the cost of a generator versus paying staff to drive to Sonoma County or Marin County to get involved in, that would be such a hassle. And I say that based upon, we were out of power too, for 2 days because of power pole, but we did end up buying a generator so that we have it for whatever's gonna happen in the future, so it makes sense to me.
Yeah, I would chime in that a generator for the facility is probably a good move. I have elderly parents, a mother who uses an electrical medical device daily a couple times a day, and we just completed that project, and they live out there, so today's kind of a test run.
Yeah.
We test ran it without it, but I guess what I want to say is what we think we might need for power here is very different than what we would need. And I think, for a home, for an inverter, which is quiet, not a generator, that costs about twice as much setup, but we may not need a monster generator here. And with some rerouting of cords in certain places and maybe a little portable AC unit, you could probably cut your generator installation costs by half, just by smaller sizing. It's interesting because people around that neighborhood out there, all kinds of them have bought generators, and they've, in my mind, invested in the wrong kind of equipment. Very noisy generators that have to run full bore, either on or off, and not, gotten the ones that had a little more sophisticated circuitry, which one for here would probably have all that, but it's really an interesting planning to not overbuy and overbuild.
At this time, I couldn't support buying a generator, just for one thing, the cost associated with it. I could see too if, for instance, my family has canteen vending service. They have a huge warehouse full of food, refrigeration, that kind of stuff. They're buying a generator, a big generator, and they're doing, I get that for them because they're gonna actually have loss. If they don't have a generator, they're gonna have food spoiled, they're gonna have loss. So I absolutely get it. If we had renters on that side, 2/3 of our building had food, we probably should, I think about that just because that's what we should do. But at this point, I don't know, as far as to me, it feels like there's a lot of rushing out to get generators when we don't know what really is going to happen. And I still feel our biggest issue is getting out our benefit payments. And if worse came to worse, they could say, send the file you sent last month, gone. And you could have a few here would be much easier than even the county. Because with the county, you have a payroll where things are getting changed every pay period. Here, they're pretty static. As far as they stay, as far as the benefit is the same. So anyway, I don't know. I at this time, I could not vote for a generator.
Well, I think personally that, like listening to what you have to say, you sound like you have quite a lot of experience in.
Learned a lot in 2 weeks. We should have bought stock in generator companies.
Yeah.
We didn't know this, we didn't pay attention.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there are people available for consultants too who are very knowledgeable, and maybe staff could consult with an expert, because I don't know personally. I don't know much about it. I think it sounds like Richard would be a good consultant.
I've attended 3 of the PG&E sessions, and they're telling different stories every time.
Oh.
It's really interesting to see the evolution of this thing.
Same people telling different stories?
Yeah, from the very first one in Ukiah, different stories.
First, I agree with Sherry completely. I think it's just an overreaction all the way around. I don't want to see her pinching on us, spending a bunch of money on something that's just a knee-jerk reaction. And I've had a generator on my house for 14 years, and I live in the hills, and I've used it 3 times. And it costs $6,000 or $8,000 by the time they bought the generator and then the electrical to hook it up. And I think that this PG&E thing is just a political ploy that's going to go away. Because people will die if they turn off the power, definitely, versus some hypothetical fire that we've lived through dry days forever. But I'd like to hear from Dan, because you had PG&E on the floor for quite a while at your board meeting recently.
Yeah.
And so you got it from the horse's mouth. What do you?
Well, they were pretty vague. I mean, from the reporting I read in the newspapers, they were more specific in Lake County about where they were going to at least install like cooling stations or refuges for members of the public to go to, and they didn't have that kind of detail in Mendocino County yet. They're coming back with that information. I actually was kind of curious what maybe Sherry and James have heard at maybe department meetings, because I know that the county has had at least one trial where they shut off the power at Low Gap, and then we're testing, I thought, the generator that they have in place, or the generators they have in place there, and because they were doing that to see if they needed to install upgraded new generators for Low Gap. So I don't know if you've heard anything about.
But our power never went off. They did that whole test. We scheduled our lunches to shut the office down just so we could have, limited stuff. Okay, go to lunch at this time, and then our power nothing went off. Our computer stayed up, our lights, everything stayed up.
Is that because the generators were working?
I don't know if they even shut off the right thing. I don't know. I think they're going to redo that. I don't think that was a real successful test.
Maybe that's why I didn't hear any reports back.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you're dealing with solar, probably one of the more important things is battery backup to the solar, because when the sun isn't shining and you're not making any electricity, is there any thought about that, or does anybody provide battery backup that can be charging when the power's on and be there for a number of hours when the power goes off, as opposed to a noisy generator sitting out there that you have to rewire the whole building for?
Tesla.
I'm
serious.
Are they available?
Well, you gotta come in
Are
through
they
your main,
Yeah, just connect to the box.
So the one thing that I have heard about solar, and because I did ask the question several years ago about of the county about the possibility of us doing something with solar, and the response I got was along the lines that because we're on City of Ukiah power, the rates are so low that it just doesn't make sense to install solar. The cost benefit isn't there for a solar installation, and
we don't get the tax benefit.
And we don't get a tax benefit at all. The other, and I'm not certain of this, but I think that would have been a solar installation that's still grid connected. So there, the battery backup, if you go solar on battery backup totally independent, that's a more expensive system than a solar grid connected system. Because in that, if you're solar grid connected, you don't have to have the entire battery system. So, I don't know that would be cost effective for us, because having heard that from county facility staff about the City of Ukiah rates being relatively low, and there's no tax advantage for us. So
It's an infrastructure investment.
There you go.
now, if we wanted to sell the building, and then a private investor bought this and we leased our space back, then we could conceivably put in the contract that they need to put solar in, and then they get the tax benefit. I've had that thought. So,
Well, and the solar companies do it two ways. One, you pay them full price for it, and you get the tax benefits, or you get a reduced price and they retain the tax benefits by owning the system and leasing it to you.
right.
Which sounds like a good idea, except until you go to sell the building, and now all of a sudden the power system on the building is leased to you, but you want to sell the building to her, and she has to assume the lease, and this is a big deal if anybody's ever thinking about getting a leased solar system for your home. Don't do it. Because it can be extremely complicated and difficult with your lenders and buyers in the future.
So back to operations here with the power outage. PG&E's first shot at this was 5 days minimum, 14 days maximum, while they test all their lines. I don't know what they told, I don't remember what they said at the soups, but that's what alarmed a lot of people. The analysis of what work we would need to approve or to do in 14 days is part of the program. If you really only need to print checks and they go out, how often?
Once a month.
So how long does that take? You might only need power in this building for that much time. And so battery backup that's charged by the existing system is an option. Also, small generators with isolating a couple computers on them with fans on the face of the operator is another option to get you as low as 3,500 watts, which is a $1,000 generator. So part of it's the analysis of the place with the refrigeration. They need to rock. They need to just go.
Yeah.
Of course, they also can shut down at night and gear up in the daytime. It's all variable stuff. So I think another analysis about the absolute minimum work that would need to be accomplished while power was out for 2 weeks might be something to look at. And then you might have a generator in the stinking closet that you roll out, plug in a big cord, and get the checks run or whatever, get the computers running, and then go home until the power's back on. So I think a lot of people are being very much alarmist in what they think they need at their house or their facility. So, anyway.
I'm reminded of Y2K.
Everything's gonna blow up.
It's a Y2K deal.
Yeah.
Much ado about nothing.
So do we have direction to staff to do more research? Is that- Yes.
I did not throw out a recommendation or my thoughts because I wanted the board to have the discussion. I look at this very much in a cost-benefit risk analysis framework. There is a 3 or 4 day period during the calendar month that we have to look at. So if you think about, and we're really only talking about 5 months out of the year. So there are 20 days out of the calendar year that we have to be concerned with not having power. If we don't have power in this facility during some of those 20 days during the calendar year, what is the backup? Well, we've got good backups. If the administration center, the county administration center is running, we will not miss. The only thing that will be different for us is the printing of checks. And we have LRS prepared and ready to go. We make a phone call, tell them we're activating our business continuity plan because of the public safety power shutoff. We are doing all of the benefit preparation. We are doing the ACH. All we need them to do is print checks, and they will do it. And they will do it, and it will get mailed on the day they're supposed to get mailed. If we get there. If we get a couple days advance notice, like PG&E says they hope to give us, we may not even have to go to that point because we can process benefits very early. I mean, we could do it as early as 10 days prior to the end of the month. So we have that in place. Knowing that we've got if we get advance notice, we can get prepared and get everything done, and even have the checks printed and ready to go. The low likelihood of this happening during our critical time, the strength of our backup plans, I come down on the side of I just don't see the need for doing this, for putting in an alternate power source at this time. If we go through the year and we've had to do, 4 alternate runs of benefit processing, then I'll want to reevaluate that. But at this point, just the cost benefit and the likelihood of it being impacted, I don't see the need that we have to do this right now.
Yes.
I agree, and I understand that, and I'm thinking about your Y2K comment, because it might be a lot of worry about nothing. But I do still have the question of if it happens, and if it's 5 days, or if it's 14 days, and we're just worried about checks, my question is, what happens for the rest of the work? Will we have 14 days where everybody's at home doing nothing? I mean, that's my question. And maybe it's not a necessary question because it's unlikely that it will happen, but I think we should at least.
We'll all be doing.
Everybody will be in the same boat. I mean, everybody's gonna be down because, and everybody's gonna be trying to stay cool. It could be hot. Everybody could be bailing out of town too.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Bring your camper to Park Point Arena.
There you go. I mean, if Sonoma's not down and people have family there, people could hop down, go down and stay in Sonoma County, whatever.
I'll give you my address.
Yeah. Well, I'll stay with
Oh,
you.
good. You have a pool?
We have a hot tub.
Ooh.
Well, it won't be hot. Well, maybe hot from the sun.
It'll be nice and cool if our power goes in.
We all go to the beach.
Yeah.
So, if I may, Madam Chair,
Yes.
address the questions there. During a power outage, my understanding is that the county intends to activate the Emergency Operations Center. And they will be reaching out to all county staff to potentially help in a, much like we've seen, unfortunately, very recently in the past 2 years, the disaster response. They're going to treat the public safety power shutoff very similarly. While the response will look very different, there's still going to be an emergency response. So our staff could get called in to work in various avenues in terms of disaster response. But if our facility is without power, there's nothing for us to do here. So it would not be my intent to have staff here. I mean, it makes no sense to me.
No, it makes no sense.
My understanding is the county is looking at that from an HR perspective and preparing a plan for what that will look like in terms of what staff will be authorized to do in terms of leaves or whatever else. If it goes on for 2 weeks, the likelihood of benefits being impacted increases dramatically. But this is the first time I've heard 14 days. Everything I've heard is up to 5 days.
Yeah, we're hearing 1 to 5.
Yeah.
So,
That's the change story.
With all respect to you government types,
Thank you.
in the real world,
That's a racist comment.
the business community will go wild because it costs them money. We're all sitting here talking about,
Oh, yeah.
oh, well, we'd have to do this and we'd have to do that. But we're not talking about the lost productivity and bankrupting businesses and restaurants. And
Restaurants.
this is not gonna happen, kids. This is not gonna happen.
I hope you don't eat those words.
I hope I don't either, but if it does happen, there will be people put on a cross if it does happen.
I think you'd have to look at 5 days of continuous 80-mile-an-hour wind for us to be getting that kind of a deal. And that's what the problem is. The wind blows, knocks things into the power lines, and they catch fire. Well, what are the odds of us having 5 days of continuous 80-mile-an-hour wind? I wouldn't want to bet in Las Vegas on
The
those
premise is a prediction of high winds, they shut it off. And then they have to go inspect everything
Yeah.
before they turn on. I mean, on one hand, I agree with you. On the other hand, can they go bankrupt again and get sued by whole communities that have been, all the people in it have been burned to a crisp? I
Well,
mean,
didn't they just pass a bill to prevent that? The governor
to
just.
prevent it,
No, the governor to prevent the
Yes,
bankruptcy.
they did.
go to bankruptcy, but again, another paradise is like, really? You know, will that happen? Will they let
Knock
that?
on wood.
It's in waiting in Marin. It's called Ross. Just drive through there. It's gonna,
Right.
it'll be good toast, and they have a fire down
Okay, so,
Happy thoughts.
Yeah.
So I don't have a sense of direction from the board. I'm more than happy to go gather additional information if that's what you want.
Would you fault check the current plan, like, you know, is the transmission line gonna be shut off into Sonoma County as well? The one, there's 3 that come into here and that's one of them, things like that.
There's actually 4. One from Sonoma County, one from Humboldt County, and then 2 from Lake County.
Oh, the Humboldt one, I didn't know
I'm still interested in what the bare minimum would be just to get checks out, not to run the building and all that sort of thing.
I'm happy to get some information and bring it back. I just,
there. You know, checks, these are for people who are not on ACH.
correct.
Well, why don't we tell them, hey, if you're not on ACH, then you run the risk of not getting a check.
that. That's a good
Why
idea.
is this all,
Yeah,
why is this
sign
all put on
Yeah.
us when we have ACH?
Yeah.
How
Tell
many
them.
people are still getting
This
it?
is a great
I
way to
believe it's
motivate, this is a great way to motivate those people to
30-ish.
sign up for it. Well,
30
30
to
people.
40 people.
That might be
And
your
write
next
them or tell
Yeah,
them,
that's
We-
you run the risk.
We do it
okay,
we do it consistently with the newsletter. The 30 or so people getting checks don't get the newsletter.
We'll send them a letter.
Yeah, send them a
Say,
letter.
you
Go
are,
there.
you are not getting on ACH like everybody else. If there is a power outage, which PG&E is predicting that may happen, your checks may be delayed.
I think it's a letter.
You're welcome to
Pass.
sign up for ACH.
okay.
Their name on it,
Pass.
her name on it.
I don't remember the year, but when Katrina went through
New Orleans.
New Orleans, shortly after that, at a SACRS meeting, we had the administrator for the city of New Orleans retirement system make a presentation, and he talked that their building was off limits to them for like 3 months.
Wow.
And they tried to get, they did what we were talking about. They told the bank, hold on to that tape. That's what you're gonna pay on until we tell you otherwise, and we'll adjust later for that. And I sent a letter out at that time to everybody saying, this is what can happen. If we have a situation where we can't get your check printed, you're not gonna get it. Please sign up for direct deposit.
Yep.
We may have gotten a dozen people that signed up at that time.
Well, that's a dozen less
Yeah.
checks.
Interestingly, you know, one of the first board meetings when I was here, I proposed that we do away with paper checks and got a great deal of pushback from the board. So we gave that up, but I have continued to try to advance that agenda because I think it's the way we need to go. Of everything we have tried, the one thing that made the biggest difference in the number of checks we sent out was changing the date we put them in the mail. We used to put them in the mail the day before the date on the check, and I changed that and I said those go out on the day on the check. And that made a difference.
That's a motivator, huh?
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I think Dan would.
Yeah, Dan.
Okay.
I think Lee's suggestion's excellent, and if there's only 30 checks are going out, why should all the other members of the organization pay up to $20,000 for a generator to accommodate those 30 people who are creating an extra cost that the other members don't create? And the other thing is, I mean, there hopefully has been an improved contact system for HR to the association employees 5 here so that, because I believe you'll be contacted to either volunteer at the call center or at some other place. So there will be a need for the 5 here somewhere else.
Right.
Which you will be happy to send them out immediately.
So, to both of those points, there is HR is working on a list right now, and the last we've heard, they've got a lot of county employees, up to maybe even 200, that they've already got contact information, that they're really, maybe the ones that do want to get called kind of thing, like they are being very proactive, so, which I think is good.
Yes.
And then the other thing is, I think that is a great point with the checks, and heck with the newsletter, just send an insert with their check. Just put an insert in there saying, talking about the PT, you know, the, what is it?
PSPS.
PSPS? Yeah, about that shutdown, and say your check may be delayed if, in this event, yeah. Yeah, just put it in with the
There's a
check.
certain number of people in every area that are non-banking people. And
Yeah.
nothing you do
Yeah,
will make them become banking people.
yeah.
And
And
the
giving them
motion, or
notice.
do you feel so directed?
So we can absolutely put a notice in with the remaining checks that it could be impacted if there's a loss of power.
Sign up. Here's the form.
Is it the direction that we want to delay checks if we're without power? And we would not activate PG Secure to print checks?
How much would it cost us to activate them to print the checks?
So we pay an annual service fee for PG Secure, so that we pay that no matter what. And then it would just be a time and materials charge. So I'm gonna guess it would probably, I'm making up numbers right now, $600 to print checks.
30 checks?
Yeah.
I think we need to tell these
Yeah.
people, hey, you know, you're not getting your check. If you don't sign up for ACH, we're not gonna spend $600 of everybody else's money so that you people, you know, at $20 extra, or we're gonna take it out of your check, and that would be impossible.
Richard,
But we're not gonna do it.
That's a
So,
month or two?
I think we don't hit them with that hammer. We give them a letter that says, due to public safety power shutoffs, you may not receive your check in a timely manner.
right, you may be
If it is important to you that you have that money in a certain day, we suggest you set up for direct deposit. If you do not do banking, please understand, we'll do our best. And if we get it down to a few folks, then a few folks will get late checks.
And you could put that in every single check that goes out from here on out. Just keep that in there. If this is going on for 5 years,
Yeah.
just keep it in there every check.
But Tim is right. I mean, I have an employee that doesn't bank,
Yeah.
you know?
there are those people.
You know, it's crazy.
And I think most
They have
banks,
cash
if you
on
have
their
direct deposit of
They got a barrel
anything,
buried
will give you
in the
free
back,
banking.
you know?
They don't, there's no fees charged. So it might be worth looking into, and if that's the case, we tell them that this is free to you and it's costing us $600 a month to print your check.
So I will remind you that several months ago, the board expressed interest in getting away from any paper checks, and that is on your work plan.
Here's a good excuse.
It's not coming anytime soon, but there's a way. I mean, most state governments no longer issue paper checks.
That's right.
If you don't have direct deposit, you get a reloading debit card. That is the alternative. Because there are people that are unbankable. They cannot get a bank account. So you send them a debit card and you reload it every month
That's great.
via the ACH process. So, or something very similar. It's all electronic.
For the
So
people that don't bank, would they use a debit card?
if they want to get their money, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Are you aware of what other 37 Act systems have done?
I'm not sure of that at this point.
So we've come full circle to a different solution to a big problem.
So, because I thought Social Security went to direct deposit. So if our members are enrolled in Social Security and they're getting a direct deposit from Social Security, how is it that they cannot get a direct deposit from
Good
the
question.
Retirement Association?
Maybe they just don't want to.
Yes.
At the end of it, I don't know if any of it will matter. If we're out of power and the bank that they bank out is out of power, they won't be able to cash their check, they won't be able to withdraw money from a debit card or their regular bank card.
Right.
They aren't gonna have their
Right.
money until the power comes back on anyways.
Right.
That's a good point.
So at the end of the day, I think we're talking about things that likely won't matter.
Well, if they have their bills paid on automatic pay, they'll get paid.
It can draw out of the
Stuff's not
account there,
done
yes.
so, maybe unless it's a savings bank.
Yeah, if it's a local bank, it may not have the power to update your account, I don't know what their contingency plans are.
And to have cash, I mean, people are supposed to have cash on hand.
I did have that
Try
experience
and
with
pay a bill
the
with cash.
last.
Happens every day, come to my office.
The fire that we had,
20s.
we were evacuated, we had no cell service, and I happened to have some cash, and that was the only way I could get gas and food for several days. So I don't know if, we don't want to, I don't know about, everybody's talking about that anyway, that people need to have a little bit of cash
Yeah.
to survive.
And there is talk of grocery stores, maybe as many as 3 in this area that will have generators. And that means if they're fully up, then maybe people could still use credit cards and that kind of thing there. I don't know.
Keep your car full of gas.
Yes.
People will
Yes.
keep gas in their garages,
Yes.
which will result in tragic
Fires.
fires. All this has just humongous bad side effects.
Well, they got what they wanted. There's a
Well, give them what
there's
they
a
need.
bailout.
Well, they need it.
So
That's the reality.
are we at a point where we either give direction to staff, or staff already has the direction, and move on to the administrator?
I think this is ongoing. I mean, I think we'll probably be talking about this every meeting
Yes,
and getting updates and,
yeah. So we just move on.
So if I might summarize what I think the direction is, communicate with those members that are receiving checks still, that their checks, if there's a PSPS that affects us, could potentially be delayed. Gather some additional information on adding an alternate power source to the facility, what the requirements would be and what the potential costs would be there. And then amend our working plan for now, that if we are not able to print checks, we will not activate PG Secure.
Yeah.
One other question. To look at the 30 people and put them up against if they get Social Security checks or not. I mean, if they're at that age, they get Social Security, or if they're pre-Social Security. Because Dan did have a point, if their Social Security goes to a bank account, you know, why not direct deposit? But if they're under 65 or whatever, they might even be an early Social Security person, 62, or a disabled.
But if we can load up a credit card for them, you know, a debit card, we'll just tell them, we're changing the program. No more checks after January.
That's why I just like
Period.
to understand the information and what the holdout is on being part of.
Yeah, let's set January 1 for as a target, and no more checks after January 1.
Sure.
in the
Let
meantime,
us- It's on the work plan.
Okay,
We're moving in that direction,
okay.
but, you know,
Zero tolerance.
I would like the retirement administrator to have discretion, or whatever your new title is, I'm sorry.
big dumb rodeo clown.
I would like you to have discretion, because I agree that we shouldn't send the checks out, but if it did get to a point where it was 5, 6, 7 days, then I think we should activate it, and we should get them their checks, even though they might not be able to do anything with them. They may not live here even. But I think if it's a day or two, I think that's good to wait. But if it does get to where it is a real extended period of time, I mean, I think you should have that discretion of, okay, should we activate this? Say if it's a week or 2 weeks, which I don't think is gonna happen, but it could.
Could.
A lot of things have happened that we don't think could
Right.
happen. So,
So I think the discretion piece is a good idea, and I like the idea of some advance notice. I mean, if the power goes out tomorrow, I mean, are you saying you're not gonna, because they really haven't had the notice yet, so I just want to make sure there's that notice and an opportunity for them to change their game plan a little bit. If the power goes out tomorrow and we haven't notified them, I'm not sure I'm comfortable advising the board to pull the plug.
We're
that
just
way.
on the daisy chain here. It's like PG&E doesn't notify us, so we don't have an obligation.
I think what he's talking about is not giving people a check, and we give them 30 days to read the letter and decide.
Yeah.
And for the next 30 days, we would print checks if the power went out.
Jerry, the county doesn't issue social services checks anymore. It's all
no, and that's
ATM.
something that they issue EBT cards, debit cards that they load, and that's something that's being talked about too, is, those have to be loaded to be able to be used, and that's a vulnerable group that's gonna not have
And-
access to maybe cash, so.
And that happened many years ago with a much larger group than 30, that they were just told, this is it. You will no longer get a check. You will get this card. You will protect your PIN number, you do all that stuff. And they make provision on there for them to use it in an ATM to get money to pay their rent or things that they can do. But I remember when that went into effect. And you're talking thousands and thousands of people that
Right.
were told, this is how it is. I think we can tell 30 people, this is how it is.
That's what
Welcome
they
to the
did
real
at
world.
Calster.
people.
Just isn't gonna happen.
The entire state of Oklahoma
Yeah.
no longer issues paper checks.
Yeah.
If you get a tax return and don't provide your account information for direct deposit, they send you a debit card.
Oh, wow. Wow.
I don't know that we want to get into the business of putting out debit cards. Probably be more expensive than $600 a month to write 30 checks, but
Well,
Upfront,
our bank
yes.
would probably do it for us.
We'd work with the bank to do it. There's some upfront costs, but the ongoing is nearly zero marginal cost, is the thing. So,
if somebody comes in to retire tomorrow and they say, I want to get a check, do we honor that, or do we say, no, you don't have a choice anymore?
per the prior direction of this board, we are still allowing that. We strongly discourage it.
So if you're gonna change the practice or policy, I mean, the agenda item today wouldn't give notice to folks that you're gonna say no more paper checks, so, maybe from a political standpoint, and I don't know about a legal one, I'm not so concerned about legal risk, but, I don't know how vulnerable these folks are, how old they are, but maybe you wanna at least put it on an agenda, so the unions have notice, and people understand, and just to throw out a word of caution, it doesn't have to be a lengthy discussion. You can kind of summarize what you talked about now, but just might not be a bad idea.
And I think you've also really cut down the number of checks from the first time we talked about this. I mean, it seems like it was at least double that, if not more. Triple maybe, I don't know.
I don't know the numbers.
It just felt like when we first had that conversation, there were more retirees that were getting paper checks where if it's down to 30, that's good. So,
Just had a thought, is there any possibility that the people are getting checks, it's because a family member is getting the checks and the person that has died?
So we have a service that provides us information on our members that pass away.
Right, I remember that.
accurate? Is it accurate?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I think that's.
But, we do have a process for capturing that information.
Somebody could have the idea, it's easier for me to cash this check than it is for me to keep a bank account open for this person
Right.
who's dead.
Right.
So James is coming back with more information, just tee it up so that it's clear that maybe you want to put this on the agenda to starting January 1st or whatever it is, and no more paper checks.
Sounds good.
Yes.
With regards to the pricing or further research on
alternate power source. It seems to me in my limited experience that 20 to 30,000 is probably a quote to power this whole, at least side of this building. So if we're gonna give the director direction to price that, I would recommend including language for the bare minimum of what it would require in the cost analysis of that, because I personally don't have an issue with a $1,000 generator as was suggested, but I do with the $20,000 to $30,000 generator.
Mhm.
Correct.
Would you believe total cost 2 grand?
Okay,
Can you make it 1,000?
so
Close.
send notice to those still receiving paper checks, bring back some further information on potentially adopting a policy or something to do away with paper checks, and gather some additional information about alternate power sources for the building for the board to consider further. That is the direction I've taken.
It sounds,
Minimum.
yeah.
And we missed the opportunity to set a new record on our meeting time.
I
Well,
tried.
we're close. So, administrative report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Trustees, you have the report. I assume you've read it. Don't ask any questions. Please update your biographies, or take a look at your bios on our website. If they need an update, please send that to Judy. The legislative report is what it is. That's all I
Okay.
have.
Any questions? Okay, we're moving on to our last item, general board member discussion. Is there-
Penultimate item, we have one more.
Oh, sorry. Oh, that's a big deal. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I am so sorry. I don't know why. Okay, now, that we're going into close.
Let's do general board member
Okay.
discussion.
Okay, I don't have, anyone have any? Okay, moving on to the closed session.
All right, Scott, close the door. All right.
Reading.
Sure.
And your report.
So on the matter of the disability retirement application of Derek Paoli, the board voted unanimously to grant a service-connected disability retirement, gave direction to staff on the effective date.
Okay. All right, the meeting, does anyone want to make a motion, or is it unanimous, the meeting to adjourn the
I move we
meeting?
adjourn.
Okay, meeting adjourned at 9:35.
Yes.
And our next meeting will be Wednesday, August 21st.
If we have
Good.
power.
If we have power.